Hello, I'm Dr. Larry Meisel. Welcome to my channel, The Examined Life, the channel for people interested in the discussion of ideas from the tremendously important to the trivial but interesting. Today's topic is going to be long-term happy marriages. The majority of this content is taken from my understanding of the work of Doctors Julie and John Gottman. They're two professors and researchers from the University of Washington in Seattle. They have been successfully married for over 30 years. They've also been doing marriage counseling and research on marriage for over 30 years. And they've been able to identify the things that lead to long-term happy marriages and the things that lead to long-term unhappy marriages or end in divorce. Their work confirms my intuitive understanding of marriage, which is that in long-term happy marriages, people say that the person they're married to is a resource and an ally that they rely on to get more of what they want out of life. And they enjoy returning the favor. So each other's happiness is a priority. And it's not just transactional, it's emotional. It's the satisfaction of having a resource and ally. It's emotional, it's spiritual. And the components that they identified as leading to long-term happy marriages is called the sound relationship house. And I'll be explaining the different levels of the sound relationship house in just a little bit. But first, I want to also talk about what they identified as, they call the Four Horsemen of the Apocolypse, which is the things that lead to unhappy marriages or eventually end in divorce. And those things are, the Four Horsemen are criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and emotional shutdown. Criticism is when we have a problem and it's your fault. The problem is what you do. You don't clean up after yourself, or you don't write the debit receipts down in the checkbook, or there's something that you do that is the cause for our problem. So the solution is you've got to change. And a person on the receiving end of this feels blamed, and they respond with defensiveness. They have to defend themselves. And they say, no, I don't. Besides, you do too, and I cleaned up your mess last time. Direct defensiveness. Another form of defensiveness is kind of the passive, why are you always picking on me? All you ever do is find fault. But it's pushing away the idea that I could be the cause of the problem. So we go back and forth with your fault, no, your fault, no, your fault, back and forth, back and forth. And when that goes back and forth long enough, it starts to develop, it generalizes into contempt. And I say contempt is when the problem goes from what you do to what you are. So you don't clean up after yourself as a behavior. You're selfish and lazy and you're a slob. That's contempt. That's me being better than you, and it's no longer what you do, it's what you are. And when it becomes that, it also, you get into a situation where you lose track of all the other person's good qualities. You're no longer, contempt is, that's all you are. You're no longer smart, you're no longer good looking, you're no longer hardworking, you're no longer thrifty, trustworthy, reverent, and brave. You're just that thing, and there it is again, and there you go again, and you're always, and why can't you ever, and why don't you never, and back and forth, and over the long run, this then leads into the fourth horseman of the apocalypse, is called emotional shutdown. Emotional shutdown happens when people feel emotionally flooded, and they go into fight or flight mode, and you hear people saying things like, um, "It's no use. I don't care anymore. Um, we always argue about the same stuff. We never get anything accomplished." And then in the extreme phases of shutdown, they just start saying nothing at all. I think they might actually be trying to help the problem by not making things worse. So you'll phrase, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So that's what they do. They just completely close down. Fortunately, the Gottmans identified the antidotes to the Four Horsemen, and these are the antidote to criticism is using what's called the softened startup. And I tell folks that the formula for the softened startup is either I feel about and I need. Another formula that I recommend to folks is when blah 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 happens, I think and I feel and I need, or it would help if. One of the things that John Gottman says that inside every criticism there's a longing. And that last part, the I need or it would help if, that's what I'm longing for behind my criticism. So you fill in the formula by saying, an example that I use with a lot of people is, when the ceiling fan is spinning and all the lights in the room are on and there's nobody in the room, I think of the waste of electricity, I think of the electric bill going up, I think of our finances, I think of living paycheck to paycheck, I think of bouncing checks, and it just snowballs, and I feel frustrated, I feel desperate, I feel ignored, I feel disrespected, and it would help if we could come up with a solution, we could come up with a system for turning off electricity when it's not being used. It would help if anybody who sees electricity not being used, take the 5 seconds to go over and turn it off. It would help if anybody who gets caught leaving electricity on has to put $1 in the jar. It would help if we put signs over light switches that say, "Turn me off before you leave." Now, the person on the receiving end of this feels less blamed, and so it's easier for them to do. The antidote to defensiveness is called accepting influence, which is simply to say, "You're right. That's a good point. It makes sense to me how that would make you mad. And sure, why don't we try something and come up, and then you can come up with suggestions for change." So the person who was being defensive and was giving resistance is now giving cooperation. And the softened startup helps to undermine or lessen the defensiveness, and defensiveness tends to undermine and lessen contempt, because you're getting cooperation, and so that you can start to remember some of the person's good qualities, and you stop feeling so much contempt, so much resentment and rejection for the other person. So some other things that undermine contempt are what Gottman refers to as the bottom 3 layers, the first 3 layers of the sound relationship house. And I think of them a little bit differently. I turn them sideways, and I think of them as blocks in the foundation of the sound relationship house. So the first one is called love maps. And personally, I find, that's kind of a corny term for me, but what it refers to is how much you know about each other. Because good friends know a lot about each other. And after you've been together for a while, you have heard a lot of the person's stories, and you think you know everything, but people change over time, and it's important to keep up to date. New things happen. People's attitudes and opinions and things, circumstances in their life change, and so it's important to continue to exchange the information so that you keep up abreast on what's going on in the other person's internal and external world. The second block in the foundation is referred to as admiration and appreciation and affection. That's giving each other compliments, letting each other know the things that you like about each other, giving credit, giving recognition, and as well as verbal and physical affection. The gentle, affectionate touches or the pet names that we have for each other, things like that, that go along with how much you know about each other and telling each other what you like. Then the third thing is called turning towards instead of turning against. And I use an example for this is there's turning towards, there's turning away, and then there's turning against. So the example I give to folks is two people are driving in the car and one person says, "Hey, look at that billboard. That's interesting. I never noticed that." And the other person says, "Oh, yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of cool." So they're day-to-day things that we do. We make bids for each other's attention. And when we get it, we feel accepted, we feel noticed, we feel valued. When we don't get it, we feel rejected and we feel discouraged. And after a while, people can grow further apart because they stop trying for the connection. Some other forms of turning towards are things like developing rituals of connection, things that we do on a regular basis to stay connected to each other, to stay involved, to things like a lot of folks, have weekly date night. Some people have special rituals that they have for how to celebrate birthdays and holidays and special events, how to recognize each other for accomplishments and achievements. We do these things. Some folks, one of the folks that I know, this fellow's wife was born in July, and she's from Atlanta, and she's a Braves fan, and so every year in July, they go to a Braves game. They go to the Varsity, which is a landmark greasy spoon in Atlanta, and they have chili dogs and onion rings and Coke, and then they go downtown. Then they go to the stadium. Sidelight, the Braves stadium used to be in downtown Atlanta. Now it's out in the suburbs of Atlanta, and they ruined the stadium. It's like incredibly hot and it's uncomfortable, and you can't find the seats, and it's horrible. So they might have to find a new ritual for celebrating that birthday. But that's an example. It can be small little things like once a week date night. It can be how you greet each other at the end of the day or how you say goodbye to each other in the morning. But it's things that you do repetitively over time to maintain that sense of connection. So we got replacing defensiveness with the softened startup, replacing criticism with the softened startup, replacing defensiveness with accepting influence, and replacing contempt with turning towards each other, rituals of connection, and everyday recognizing and responding, being available when the other person wants our attention. Then the fourth horseman is emotional shutdown. And the antidote for shutdown is self-soothing and self-calming. Shutdown happens when people get overwhelmed, they get emotionally flooded, and this can happen gradually over time. And it usually also happens in the midst of a fight. People go into fight or flight mode, and fight or flight mode is a survival mechanism that's very, very helpful when there's a physical danger. But when there's an emotional or a psychological threat, the fight or flight response doesn't help. Because when you're in the fight or flight response, you literally can't see anything positive. And in survival situations, that's good. In relationship situations, that's when you need to be able to see the little positive things. And you literally can't until you calm down. I like to tell people about a research project that the Gottmans did where I'm paraphrasing and probably distorting or misrepresenting, but I think I've got the essence of it right. Where distorting or misrepresenting, but I think I've got the essence of it right. Where um, they the project that they did was they had couples come in to be videotaped talking about their problems, and they weren't doing any counseling with them. They were just videotaping the conversation. And when things got heated, and they were also monitoring their pulse rate in addition to videoing the conversation. So when their pulse rate went up over 95, which is a good indicator that you're flooded and you're going into fight flight mode, they'd come in and tell the couple that we've got a problem with the video equipment, so we need y'all to just not talk for a while. We'll give you some magazines, we'll give you some things to do, we'll play some music. Just don't talk. Just try to relax a little bit. Just take a time out. And they're monitoring. And there's nothing wrong with the video equipment. They're just monitoring the pulse rate. And when the pulse rates come back down into the normal range, they come in and tell the folks that the problem is fixed, and they ask them to resume the conversation. And usually it takes about 20 minutes, after which the second conversation is always better than the first one. The first one was just continuing to spiral out of control. The second one, they've had a chance to reflect and think about how they'd like to do it better. There's something else that I tell folks about that, but right now I don't seem to remember what it was. So I'll go back to when you get the foundation of the sound relationship house, that creates a feeling of what's called, positive sentiment override. Positive sentiment override is when there's feelings of goodwill that make you able to give the other person the benefit of the doubt, or to use humor, or to somehow make a repair when you've hurt somebody's feelings. And that then sets up the atmosphere that's necessary in order to be able to manage conflict, to resolve conflicts that are resolvable, to find compromises in areas where you can compromise, and to, here's a scary statistic, which is that the Gottman's research indicates that 69% of the conflict in marriage is not resolvable. Because it's about three things I find. It's about the fundamental characteristics of people's personality, their values and their belief systems, or dreams that they've had for a long time that they're not willing to give up on. And when you get in those gridlock situations, it feels like if I give up on this, if I give in, I'm going to have to be giving up a part of myself. So the Gottmans have a term, they refer to it as, instead of resolving the conflict, honor the dreams, to replace argument and persuasion with curiosity, to go from, why the hell did you do that, to, no, really, I'm serious, why'd you do that? I wouldn't have thought of doing that. An illustration for this is one person who says, I'd like to have a second house. I want a vacation spot. And the other person says, well, gee, that would be nice, but don't be ridiculous. I mean, we don't have the money to do that. We haven't even started saving for the kids' college fund. There's no way we could afford a house. Let it go. And the other person says, well, when I was growing up, my parents used to fight a lot, and I'd leave to get away, and I'd go out in the woods, and I'd sit in the woods, in a tree, in nature, and it always made me feel better, and I need that. I want to have a place for us to go, to get away. And the person says, yeah, right, I get it. I understood it the first time, but we can't afford that. Stop, will you please? With our finance, we can't do that. So instead of that, to replace argument and persuasion with curiosity, and the person says, all right, well, if we had a place, what would it be like? And the person says, well, I was thinking, to start off with, we could probably buy some land, some kind of on the mountains or someplace nice, land, seclusion. In this winter, summertime, we could drag a little pull-along trailer up there and we could stay for the weekend or maybe, just spend an entire week camping, just our little place. And then, eventually a little cabin, like a studio sort of living room, dining room, pull-out sofa, bedroom, one bedroom kind of thing. And over time, years, And the other person says, oh, well, hell, we can do that. I thought you wanted a 5-bedroom house on a lake with a boat and a pool. I thought you wanted it tomorrow. Oh, yeah, okay, sure. We can, let's, compromise. Let's talk about how we can, make that happen. So you got this foundation of the sound relationship house, which is the friendship level. You've got a positive sentiment, positive emotional atmosphere. You've got conflict management. And then the top 2 layers of the house are honoring each other's dreams, helping each other to achieve those dreams. Like I said about, in long-term happy relationships, partners are resources and allies that help each other get more of what they want out of life. Those things that I promised myself when I was younger, that I wanted to have as I got older. And then the top level is a shared sense of meaning. This is, what do we want our family to be about? What do we want our marriage to stand for? And we're working together to accomplish something. For a lot of folks, that's financial security. We're working together to have a secure retirement. We've spent 35 years or so to accumulate savings and investments in 401k and buying property, and now we got it. And we accomplished it together, and we can be thankful and grateful. And it's also the shared meaning and purpose of the marriage and the family is, a friend of mine said, when I get old and I'm sitting on the front porch rocking, he's the person I want to be rocking with. And I imagine 2 people sitting on a porch, looking back over the things that they enjoyed accomplishing, doing together. What are you going to look forward to being able to look back on? So that's it. That's the sound relationship house and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The things that lead to long-term happy marriages. The things that can threaten marriage and lead to long-term unhappy marriage or divorce. The foundation of the house, the friendship level, the conflict management level, and the dreams and the shared meaning level. And the 4 horsemen, we've got criticism, which elicits defensiveness, which elicits contempt, which leads to emotional shutdown. Being replaced by a softened startup. When blah 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 happens, I think and I feel, and it would help if. Being replaced by accepting influence. You're right, that's a good point. And I understand why that makes you mad. Yeah, let's work on it. Offering cooperation instead of resistance, which undermines the contempt. And lastly, the antidote for the emotional shutdown is being able to soothe yourself and soothe each other, to take a time out so that you can calm down, get out of fight-flight, and be able to see those little things that are most important for relationships. I appreciate your time. I thank you for listening. Until next time, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, click the notification icon. Leave some comments in the section below to let me know your thoughts and reactions on the topic, and to also give me some suggestions for how I might be able to improve my presentation. Until next time, wonder, explore, create, and grow. That's the model for the channel. That's the spirit that I want our community to have. Wonder, explore, create, and grow. Until next time.